on Brand's Flourishing Women Edition. This is the season finale, and it is proudly brought to you by Old Mutual and Literate Agency. Before I introduce our amazing guest, my name is Nompumelelo Satsha. I am a digital marketing specialist and also an entrepreneur. I am absolutely honored to have two amazing, it's Sis Thembisa and another Sis Thembisa, who I will be introducing shortly. We have Sis Thembisa Mapukata. Wait, let's try that again. Mapukata. They said it's a silent silent H in between there. Who is, of course, our general manager of alternative distribution and innovation at Old Mutual. And of course, who we know as Thembisa Mdoda, now also known as Nxumalo, who is here as our media personality. Thank you, ladies, and welcome to Pat on Brand's Flourishing Women edition today. And how are you guys?
We're great.
Good to hear. That's good to hear.
We're good. I mean, considering we're going through an entire pandemic and we're trying to stay sane, we're good. But I'm so happy to be part of this. You guys look so beautiful today.
I mean, and for those that don't know, I saw these beautiful ladies having their own personal pamper people. So I was like, Whoopie Owam, where is my pamper person? So you ladies look absolutely gorgeous. Without further ado, of course, Flourishing Women is based on conversation that will not only share your personal stories, but also to share a lot of an understanding from a leadership perspective, of course, how COVID-19 has played a role in our lives, whether we like it or not, and also gender disparity that we're seeing across, whether it's in corporate, whether it's in what we also know as Celebville and so forth. So I'm really excited to be able to go through these conversations with you guys. And Sis Thembisa, perhaps maybe let's start with the first question that we have, where it is, what are some of the challenges that we believe women are going through, when they contend within the workplace? And maybe even before we start there, I think it would only only be fitting for you to share who is Sis Thembisa.
Hi, for me, yes. I think that kind of gets me going. Sis Thembisa, you said the other day we are both sissies, so yes. I'll take the sissy for today. So Thembisa Mapukata for me is a lady that was born in the dusty streets of Guguletu. For those who don't know, I doubt, a township in Cape Town. I then grew up in the rural village in the Eastern Cape, where I spent most of my school years. And I then found myself doing my postgrad in the big city of Johannesburg. So I'm one of those people, I always say, I've been privileged to have all the exposure of all the worlds, the township, the rural, and now the city life. And then I never went back home. So in my culture or my language, they say ngachipa. So ngachipa jobeki. So I'm now a migrant worker who goes home go December. So that's me. From a career perspective, I started in the FMCG, the fast moving consumer goods. Some people would know it as the retail, where I spent more than 10 years of my career life. And I decided to change. I ended now up in the financial industry, which is completely different from the retail. If I then reflect on your question in terms of some of the challenges that are faced by women, the first one is really to make sure that there is equity in terms of the studies, the field of studies, such that we can all be equal in the career space. So there are fields of studies that were previously seen as male fields of studies. For example, if you thought of engineering, you thought of a male during our days. But I'm glad to see now that there's lots of female engineers in the field. So I think that just from an education perspective, we need to make sure that we've got women who study across all the disciplines so that you are actually much more marketable. Because before we talk about career, we need to talk about the education. And then when we come to the career, there are industries that are male dominated. For example, construction, which also talks to engineering, those are male dominated. I mean, I during my retail or my FMCG days, I worked in a fishing industry.
Really?
Yes, fishing industry.
Wow.
There you can feel the hormones as you enter that this is a real male dominated industry. And I mean, there you really need to then step up as a woman and take and own your space and not feel intimidated because you are probably one of the ladies around the table, or you're one of the few ladies around the table. So the issue around the career and the industries that are deemed to be male are some of just the hygiene and the entry things that we face as women in terms of leadership.
Which is very, very true. Because even in the arts, even in the entertainment industry, as much as you'll find women in the forefront in certain aspects, there are places where they say, okay, this is a male job. DOPs, focus pullers, the sound, where you have to carry the equipment. Yet, not is stronger, we can carry that equipment. You know what I mean? But yeah, my name is Thembisa Mdoda-Nxumalo. I am also a Wits alumni, Sis Thembisa. We were just on different campuses, different times. I went to the Wits School of Arts and I studied drama there. Before that, I qualified as a graphic designer, and then I went there and I was like, this is not for me. Ngabalega. And so being in the entertainment industry really has been crazy, to say the least, because there are certain aspects where you feel that they are pushing you back because you're a woman. And then instead of, now they tell you to have thick skin, but I decided, I think it's more just having your purpose and drive yourself forward, because once they say have a thick skin, they say be more masculine, which is exactly what we do not want. We don't want masculinity within females. We can be feminine and still be strong and still be leaders. And I've been in this industry for, I think, close to 15 years now. And it's still quite tough, but when you do something you love, you don't give up. And also there's other young girls who are looking at us thinking, we want to get into this industry. It needs to be different by the time they get in there.
I love how both Sis Thembisa, I don't know, deserve these mom Thembisa and Sis Thembisa, so that there's clarity.
Oh, you can Thembisa and Thembisa. It's
you know, you mentioned such important point. Besides the fact that I think it's a trio squad that all went to Wits, that found themselves either on West or East Campus and so forth. We'll start putting them on the market. But you know, you've Thembisa, you've also mentioned, you know, that you went from graphic right up until you went into, of course, your honors in dramatic arts, media studies, and so forth. I think I love how you've shared that you've still brought that scholastic element to media, because I think the assumption is I wake up, I feel like I can act, and then I go into doing it. You know?
You're quite right. You are so right. Do you know the one thing that I did say, especially to my parents when I shifted careers from graphic design to the arts, was that I love this so much. I've decided that I love it so much that I want to pay homage to it, which means that I must learn more about it. Also, when I get stuck, I can always fall back on that education. It's very important to get educated. And I understand that some people cannot afford it, which is why there are so many ways that you can get your acting skills done. I mean, there's theaters that have programs. There's so much. As long as you just open up your eyes, and if you are serious about it, then you'll find ways to get educated, and you can read up on it. You can read a play a day, for example. You can watch plays, you can watch movies. There's so many ways that you can educate yourself on the career that you claim to love. That's really what I believe.
I think if I can add, sorry, Mpumi, there on the career, I mean, it feels funny because we probably have had similar journeys, and I suppose there are some generic issues that actually go beyond just being a woman, but just being Black. My father wanted me to be a medical doctor. And as such, the first degree I attempted to do at WUSU was the PSC. And I mean, you can imagine wearing lab coats and you're thinking to yourself, I don't think this is for me. Going to chemistry, cutting frogs and cutting funny things and thinking, why am I here? And then after 3 years, I thought to myself, no, this is actually not me. I went into BCom. And I mean, I went and I then completed my BCom studies, and when I came to FETS, I did my postgrad in management. And I think that for me talks to perhaps lack or poor career guidance. Yes. And I think it's also important to realize that sometimes you're not going to just land nicely where you belong or where you want to be. You're going to have to navigate, and you just need to persist. You actually need to, you may not even be clear yourself where you want to go. And you just need to be, I guess, you need to be aware of what works for you, what do you like, because that is also important as you are building your career and you are building your future in leadership, because you don't want to end up doing something because somebody said you must do it and you kind of resent it for the rest of your life. And I think that for me was an important lesson, and it's something that I look back and I laugh at and think to myself, wow, yeah, I'm glad that didn't work out. And I think sometimes we just need to laugh at these things rather than be resentful that I wasted 3 years of my life. You know, it's actually a lesson rather than a wasted 3 years. Well, it's an expensive lesson because somebody has paid fees for those 3 years.
And 3 years is a long time.
That's what I'm saying. It is quite a while. I mean, I can share in that, you know, when I attempted to, I remember, and I always say the story that I was sitting in, there was a company paying for me for my chartered accountancy. And I remember sitting in that, I don't even know if it was a lesson or what. And I said, so after 3 years, what exactly am I supposed to be doing? What's the job here? And that's when I decided that, no, this is not going to work out. But going back to Thembisa, when I was doing television and screen arts, you're quite right. It was really male dominated, where your DOPs, those who were carrying cameras, and you're questioning, so what's my job then? To take down minutes? You know, where's the crux? If I want to be a producer, I want to be a DOP, I want to be how am I going to get that if I don't push, you know, and get the opportunities that our male counterparts would get?
Yeah. I know it's important to have a great support system. When you speak about those dreams, the people around you need to say, no, go do it. You can and you will. Especially for girls and for women. It's very important because you get a lot of pushback. You know what I mean?
Yeah, certainly. So Thembisa, you touched on, you know, some of the gender biases, of course, within different industries, of course, whether it's construction, be it engineering, and we've seen that change. We'll chat about, you know, how the gap has kind of increased, of course, due to COVID at a later stage. But what would you think, you know, anything more in terms of the gender biases in South Africa that we're seeing? And maybe let me pose that question to Thembisa.
Thembisa being the younger Thembisa.
Yeah. Not necessarily. We are born
the sweet 16, kaloku.
We are both sweet 16s here. Come on.
So I mean, I think we in South Africa, we're living in a country that at least has regulated issues around the gender. So at least we've got a legal framework within which we are operating it, which makes it easier. Whereas in certain countries, there are things that are actually regulated that, for example, a woman may not inherit such and such, or a woman may not do such and such a job. And I think our constitution and our legal framework is enabling in terms of the women in the country and in the whether both in the private sector and in public sector. However, there are nuances within the whether corporate or even in the informal sector, there are nuances that are just biases. For example, I think Thembisa mentioned things around this is an expectation from a woman. A woman, if you cry, you see they are soft. Meanwhile, diversity is important. You need to bring the heart. You need to be sensitive. You can't be that hardcore exterior. If you are going to be a leader is got to be somebody who's empathetic. And you cannot be empathetic if you leave your heart at home. And in fact, if you leave your heart at home, you are half a human being. So I do think that women actually bring the softness and the balance in the workplace by this, but they are much more nurturing by nature. Women are more nurturing. I mean, that's why we breastfeed. You know what I mean? And that actually gives us those nurturing instincts. And I think that diversity then becomes very important when we are dealing with human issues. Even when we are dealing with consumer or customer issues, you've got to be empathetic. I mean, gone are those days, for example, when we're discussing customers, we need to do advertising. That is just, senseless or emotionless. We're now talking about experiential marketing. People need brands that have got a soul. And if you don't have a heart, you're not going to be, that soul is not going to be coming through from a brand perspective. So that issue of women are soft or women can't take decisions or they're not hard enough, it's gone, because the world is now asking for people that are much more rounded, rather than the people that are going to be oozing human, men or male hormones. I don't even want to try that word because I always twist my tongue. Testosterone something.
No worries. And yourself? Sorry, did I cut you, Sister?
No. Go ahead, Sissy.
So, and in your perspective, Thembisa, I know you've mentioned, of course, within the industry of entertainment. Do you see any other that you've witnessed or seen in South Africa?
And Sister says, speaking about how South Africa has moved on in leaps and bounds in terms of gender, and yes, you see those changes within the arts and entertainment industry, but there will always be that boys' club. It's said, but it's not said. Now, because also once you get to that the glass roof as a woman, they're like, okay, that's as far as she can go. I mean, if she's a woman, can she produce? Is she able to be objective and not necessarily just being a woman? And if she cries, is she weak? No, all of those things really come through, especially when you're creating a story, to tell a story. You need all of that to come through so that the audience feels exactly what you're trying to tell them. So there is the boys' club where there's a lot more male producers than there are female producers, although that has changed in the last couple of years, because you can see more female-driven production companies coming through. But there is that gender bias that is going on. There is the boys' club that is there. And remember also, we all have someone to answer to. As much as artists, we don't want to answer to anyone because, oh, I'm such an artist. Yay. The spirit moves me. But you always have to answer to somebody. You know what I mean? Whether it's the production company or channel or the corporates that come through and sponsor our shows. Thank you for them. And so you always have to answer to somebody so that there's a balance. And that's all really what we're asking for, a balance of gender, a balance of stories, a balance of even the hormones, a balance of color. We just want balance so that there's equality. We don't want more than anybody else. We just want equal opportunities.
And I guess the other thing from a biasness perspective, the other thing that these are some of the unsaid things, is the fact that there is a childbearing age of women. And then there is this big bias that, they're gonna get pregnant, and they're gonna go on maternity, and productivity is gonna be held back. But I think if you look at what's happening now, we've got maternity leave, we've got paternity leave, which has actually a kind of leveled the playing field, that this whole thing of childbearing should not be seen to be only a woman's thing. And I think companies have been progressive in that now you even have nursing rooms where women are expected, they are allowed to go and express their milk for later usage. And one of my ex-colleagues used to have a kind of a bag. And I used to ask, what is this bag? Every lunchtime you're working, says, no, I'm going to express my milk. So I think while those gender biases existed, there's some progressiveness that is seen in the corporate, where women are allowed now to work half days. You know what I mean? And I don't know if this still exists. I know, for example, in the UK, they used to pay women to come back after maternity leave, which then said, yes, they used to pay women to come back, because after maternity leave, women would like, I want to look after my children. Yeah. So, and I think that actually opened up the opportunities for women to be allowed to bear children. And it's even worse now, because more households are headed by single parents who are women. That means that women need to spend more time, or at least to balance their time, to look after their children if they are single parents. Yeah. And I think those biases, while they exist, there is a progress that says women must be allowed to actually give birth, and they must be allowed. I mean, some of the corporates, for instance, at Old Mutual, we've got a nursery. If you go to our main campus in Pinelands, we've got a nursery, we've got creches, and these are the facilities that make life easy for women to be at work, because you know that you will drop your child around the corner and you go to your office, and then on your way home you fetch your child. So these are some of the biases that I think are softening up, but they still exist.
I love that, because you know, it's so crazy. When I started shooting Old Mutual's Amazing Voices, the first season, I had just given birth to my little boy, my third child. And we started shooting, I think it was 2 weeks after I gave birth. So they gave me like a nice little room. The production at Old Mutual gave me like a nice little room where I can express in between takes. You know, in between takes, and then from there they have someone who takes it to my husband, and then to the child, and then that back and forth. And it was, I'm thinking about it now, and I'm getting so emotional about it, because as much as like they don't have to, you know, but they really did. They went out of their way to make sure that I am okay mentally, physically, everything, so that I'm good to work, and I can still chat to my baby, I can still check on them, I can send the milk, I can express. If I'm not feeling okay, I can sit. So all of those things really, really go a long way. And it doesn't necessarily make women weak, because if I can do that and still express and still
kids, I mean, superhero. What are you talking about?
Superhero.
You know, I mean, you guys have said such amazing, and in talking about, I think we had the negative parts of it, but we've also seen progression in that. But I think very much both Usis Thembisa and Thembisa are both leaders by right. And Usis Thembisa did mention that being a leader requires empathy. I think that is definitely what it is. There's an element of authenticity that's also required with that to carry you through, you know, within your leadership. Sis Thembisa, maybe going back to you, how do you then, you know, there's a saying, leading from the front, leading from the back, or being that leader that's present. How would you say you can tell us about women in leadership, given your position?
And I think there's also a saying that say, when you say you are a leader, make sure that there are people that are following you. Be sure that you are being followed, because sometimes we think we are leaders and we turn back and we say, okay, where are the people? And I think the issue of leadership is probably an oxymoron, because you need to swap the roles as a leader. You need to be able to be led.
Yeah.
Because not every leader knows everything. There will be time, and the best leaders are actually leaders who look for people who are better than themselves.
Sure.
And allow those people to thrive and really learn and from those people. You need to surround yourself with the best people, and not oppress those people. And I think that's something that doesn't come natural. You actually just need to be cognizant. And you also, I mean, I started off as a specialist, being a marketer, and I spent 13 years of my life doing marketing. So you could wake me up anytime and ask me to write a brand plan, or ask me to write a media plan or a brief. I could write it with my eyes closed. And that is good, but it's very dangerous, because what that does, it actually makes you feel like a rock star, like you can do this, you know. And when I transitioned into general management, then I had to lead function. And when you now lead a function and lead businesses, you actually need people. You need people because you are not going to know everything. I mean, in the financial industry, this is a very technical industry. We're dealing here with actuaries, the guys that talk about things that you think, oh, what did he say? You know? You know, we talk about assumptions, and things that are really, they require an expert. So as a leader, you then need to understand, when do you need to be at the front, and when do you need people that to be at the front, and you must follow, and give people the light. You also need to make sure that you shine the light of other people, rather than being the person that is shining the light. I always like the analogy of, don't always be in the dancing floor. You must take time to go up to actually look at the people that are dancing, because you may just miss the step. You may have missed the step because you are busy dancing. So that actually says, let people dance. Don't always want to be dancing. And I think that's those are some of the most difficult things I've experienced as a leader, to really make sure that you give people space to grow, and also understand your own shortcomings and your own development areas, because I think we learn until we die. And you can't really believe that you know everything. You need to also learn on a continuous basis, learn from other people, learn academically, while you're also bringing people up for their own growth. And I mean, if we think about culture, leaders are the carriers of the culture.
Indeed.
They say people manage up. People manage. If you're gonna come at every day, you're gonna, I don't know now. I mean, we're working from home. I don't know what time we come. People are complaining that we start from 8 o'clock up until God knows what time we finish. But during the normal days, if you're gonna come to work every day at 9:30, when people are expecting you to come at 9, or you are always late for the meeting, guess what? They're going to do the same thing. So you've got to be a role model to the people, because they look up to you. And I guess we always forget that it's not only the people in your team that you lead. There are a whole lot of people that are looking up to Thembisa Mdoda. They really aspire to become Thembisa Mdoda. So in the least expecting moments, people are looking up to you. And I think that's where it becomes important to realize that you actually have a huge fan base that you don't even know, that are looking up to you, whether it's the people from my village who think, how does a village girl become a Thembisa whom we see on TV sometimes? You know what I mean? So it is in those moments where you really need to realize that leadership is not only in the boardroom. Leadership is really everywhere. You lead people. There's always a person who looks up to you for whatever reason, and you always really need to inspire people in the way that you do things.
I love that. I love that so much. Tim, do you have maybe your piece of advice around being a leader?
I think Sis Thembisa hit the nail on the head when she spoke about empathy, because when you're leading people, not robots. They have lives, they have livelihoods to take care of, they have children, they have families. So when we in that boardroom, we need to remember that it is them that we're leading and others that are looking in, especially within the entertainment industry. When you're knee deep, neck deep in a production, there's always those stresses, and you need to be empathetic, because we can shoot until like midnight, if they'll let us. But we can't do things like that, because you have to think about their families. You have to think about the turnaround time of them going home and then coming back at 6 a.m. the next morning. So I do honestly think that being a leader is looking at the details of the work that you're doing, the fine prints, and just making sure that you don't forget that you're leading people and not necessarily robots or just products. You know what I mean? I just started going into production behind the scenes and producing with my husband, and it is a big learning curve. This is why I was say, at ICT, you learn until you die. It's true, Dasi. You learn. Every day I'm learning something new. And I'm like, I didn't even know that. Oh, and it's okay as a leader to say, I don't know, or I did not know that. Because then you grow together with the team that you have, and your product becomes a lot more authentic. So yeah, I'm enjoying it, but hey, that's it.
And one thing that we are infamous for as women leaders, they call it what? Pull me down.
Pull me down syndrome.
Yes, the pull me down. We suffer, most women leaders suffer from pull me down syndrome.
Yeah.
And we need to understand those that have kind of made it in the echelons of corporate, or even in smaller businesses or family businesses. We need to understand the plight of think of yourself when you were starting.
Yeah.
And think of the fears. I will never forget one time I was gonna make a presentation. And I mean, there was a whole lot of things, but amongst others was the fact that there were actuaries in the room, and I'm thinking, do I even know what I'm gonna be talking about? I don't know if you had a situation where you're supposed to be talking and your mouth is sticking, because it's like you literally cannot talk, because it's like you need water. Your mouth is so dry. And I think we need to remember those experiences that we had. And as we engage and groom younger people, we need to understand that they probably where we were. And therefore you need to be a little bit kinder, because they probably have their fears. I don't know if I can say the same goes for everybody, because I just think young kids are just so confident, which I think it's great, to the extent that their confidence is not misplaced. And I think that's something that also young people need to be cautious of. Confidence is great, but confidence that is based on realism is also good. So I think it's important that we hold each other. We hold each other's hands. We motivate each other. We take time to go and say, hey, can we go and have coffee? Hey, can we go and have coffee? Can we go to Tasha's? Let's have coffee. How are you doing? And not necessarily the people that are within your span of function or span of control. I wanted to say that, but I didn't like the word control. But anyway, just young kids in the corridors, ask them, how are you doing? How is your new job? How are you finding the company? And these corporates can be so overwhelming. And just give the person an ear and say, okay, anytime, my line is open. And one other thing we learned from COVID is that we took things for granted. Not everybody has got a conducive working space at home, for example.
Yeah.
That's another one issue. The other issue is, I don't know if you guys felt the same, but last year I was tearing most of the time. I mean, you would say, well, one small thing, I would just crash. And that's how bad the COVID, trauma hit me.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, experienced tragedy with, they lost families, some people lost jobs, and you may be dealing with someone who's actually experiencing something tragic back at home. So we also need to take time to talk to people, and it is not easy. Sometimes it's not a natural thing, especially when you are working in high performing and demanding environments where it's all about numbers, it's all about performance. We forget the human touch, and we forget that people come to work with a whole lot of stuff. And I think it's something that we need to remind ourselves from time to time.
Absolutely. Sure. And just a reminder that if you nurture confidence, then it doesn't become arrogance. Then they grow within the industry as they go higher up, and then they send the elevator down the way that you did. I think we tend to forget that. And there's always these cliques of, that happen within each and every industry, where now the older generation is trying to oppress the younger generation because they're saying that they're coming with something new and different. But that only means that the industry is growing. And that is a good thing. That is a really good thing.
I think,
and it's not unique. Oh, there's nothing wrong having to aspire for things, I remember when I finished at Wits, and my first job was at Cadbury, the guy who interviewed asked how much I wanted, and I had already worked out in my mind what I wanted. Yes. How much was really a means to the end of what I wanted. At the time, the dolphin was the new thing. Yes. I knew exactly where I was going to be staying. I knew exactly the car I wanted to drive. And I had the price. And when I gave him the price, he jumped off his chair. What? I'm joking. He's not even my sales manager has that money. And that immediately grounded me. When he said that, he jumped in, he said, not even man. And every time he met me in the bus, he says, yes, this most expensive woman.
Because you know how much you're worth.
Oh my goodness.
You know.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I love that.
There went my dolphin dream out of the window. Stevio, the late Stevio Mapukata, he was funny.
I love this. I love what you've mentioned, and I think it goes back to mentorship. Something that I appreciate and love a lot, because not only, and I think we've learned that mentorship is not limited to just a coffee. It is, of course, whether it's a podcast or something that you've taken from somebody, from watching something, from reading, and so forth. But Thembisa did mention, that one-on-one personal communication, to say that, I'm in a role, I don't know what I'm doing. I've been called a manager, and now I don't know what's management. I found myself in those positions, and I've now found I've honestly not had the pull me down syndrome from mentors that I've had to this day, to my previous and current bosses, is that they are there to actually guide, to lead. You can be as show a hand, and we really want to say this is how we can change the world, quickly remind you to say, hang on, maybe let's review this and look at it this way to achieve what you want to achieve, which I've appreciated, certainly. But now, Sis Thembisa, and maybe let's start with Thembi. I think Sis Thembisa Mdoda has mentioned, we've seen, of course, the news and the articles of you recovering from, what Sis Thembisa has called, from people are going through grief. People have passed away, whether it's well-renowned people, an aunt, an uncle. We've all gone through something that was an ordeal in 2020. So how have you been, and how have you actually seen beyond the COVID-19? I can only imagine it's a lonely place. It's a place where you're like, what's happening? How have you overcome? Because we're absolutely excited to see that you're back. We are absolutely honored to have you, and I think that there's a quote that says, and I keep saying it, is that breath is an evidence of purpose. That you're here.
Yeah, Mpumi, how much time do you have?
I have a few minutes. Just summarize it, because I can't even say, I can only imagine. That would be arrogant of me. But yeah.
Look, it has been such a really tough road, because also this is uncharted waters for everybody. Nobody knows really what's happening. And for me, my story really is the craziest one. It's just just like all my stories, because wow, my life. So
you're a storyteller.
Yeah. So you know what? So apparently I had COVID last year, but I was asymptomatic and it wasn't transferable. And then earlier on this year, I was on set, and then I went into anaphylactic shock on an allergy, and then I went into the hospital, and then I kept on going back and forth, and they didn't know what was wrong with me after that allergic reaction, because my heart was starting to give up, and my lungs as well. I could hardly breathe. I couldn't walk. I take the medicine, I think I'm okay, and then I wake up in the evening and I can't breathe at all, and I'm back in the emergency room. And then they found out that I have long COVID, which is not necessarily COVID-19, it's the after effects of COVID, which then attacks your organs. And for me, it was my heart and my lungs, especially that was starting to fail me. And so I think once we got the diagnosis, only then did I start having hope, because every day it was just a different thing. And most of the time I was like, you know what, maybe nyahamba. And my family was like, you do not think like that. We do not give up. And that's the one I kept on reminding myself, because also I want to see my children grow up, and I don't want my children to grow up without a mother. And because we've seen that happening a lot. And while I was also recovering, I lost a very close friend and mentor of mine, Shauna Ferguson, as well. So you see all this happening around you, and you see your body giving up on you, and you're like, oh my goodness, what is this? So I even go into therapy, because it's such a traumatic thing to go through. I mean, it's been now 4 going on 5 months. And I only literally recently got the diagnosis when I was in my last hospital stay, and they said it's long COVID, and then they know how to treat it. But the length of the treatment is also quite crazy, because it has to be up to about 6 months. If I'm walking up the stairs, I get tired so easily. I have to take breaks, which is a lot better than before. When I was going to the bathroom, I had to take a break each and every step. You know, it's difficult with the breathing, and the heart races. It's so crazy. I've never experienced my body like this. And also now the medication, the cortisones, I have no clothes. Like when I reached 100 kilograms, I was like, yeah, go check and
no ways. You look half better.
So I can say that it's something that it's really something that we're taking it one day at a time. And that is literally what I've decided to do also with my life, is to take it one day at a time, to be around family, to be around loved ones. And also when you need to cry, when you need to laugh, when you need to walk. I think that's exactly what this is teaching us, is that feel whatever it is that you need to feel, because there is no manual. We've never had COVID before, and now there's long COVID, and there could be something else after that. So if we're living for the moment right now with the people that we love, then at least it won't be a tiresome journey as it has been. I'm just actually really, really grateful to be alive. Number one, I'm really grateful that I get to talk about this experience and help others as well. Yeah.
You know, you it sounds like a movie. But
I mean, strength is strength.
For you to actually have had to actually stand your ground and say, no, I'm going to, live through this. I think it's absolutely powerful. And I mean, we do have our percentages, of course, of, those who want to take vaccines, etc., and those who've had COVID. But, this pandemic has also affected, women very much so. I think Sis Thembisa did go back to statistics of, homes led by women. What would be the impact, of COVID-19 on women and the households that are led by these women?
Yeah, I was
and
actually.
How do they maybe find their way in terms of healing as much as you have?
Do you know what? I was actually reading the other day that COVID has made about 94,000 orphans, which then goes back to what we were saying, that they are single mother households. You know what I mean? 94,000 orphans, that is way too high. And the unemployment rate as well has gone up, has just shot up as well. I think what we need to do is to have, firstly, conversations like these. We need to speak up about what we are going through, especially as women, because you actually never know who's listening and who can help. Secondly, we need to have policies in place for COVID-19 and for long COVID. I mean, I can tell you the longest story where I thought I was covered, and I'm going through the 6 months thing, and they're like, "Oh no, you're not sick enough for us." I was like, "Okay, then it's all right." And so there's been stumbling blocks upon stumbling blocks with my healing, but you get up and you go. And the more women talk, the more things change. I've said this time and time again. The more we speak and the more we have honest conversations, the more we realize that we're more powerful than we think, and the more things change. And then the more you realize that we are able to get up and do something. Because when you're going through something like this, you always feel like you're very helpless. I don't have money for this. I don't have strength for this. I have to go and do that, so I can't do that. So we're so good at multitasking, but when something this treacherous comes into our realm, then we feel very helpless, and we're not. And the more we speak as women and have honest conversations, I'm telling you, we can take over this world.
And I mean, I think the talking is important, and this is where we as women who are in leadership position need to really be vocal about these issues, because it goes back, I guess, to the whole nurturing. It goes back to the whole empathy. We need to make sure that we empathize at all costs with people, and really check in on people all the time, to make sure that they are okay. Because I mean, even the working from home, we enjoyed it as a suspect when it started, but it really now has become that trap. I feel trapped. I don't know how most people do. I feel trapped that I haven't seen most people. I feel trapped that I can't have conversations freely and engage. So I think that empathy becomes very important around COVID. I mean, people have got funerals every weekend. We need to understand that that's traumatic. I was thinking the other day, my boss is going to start thinking I'm running a funeral parlor because I'm going to a funeral almost every second weekend. And that brings me to my point around women have lost partners. And I always say at home, I don't know if it's me, but it feels like more men are passing away with COVID. And I really am looking forward to actually seeing the stats, because that has been my anecdotal experience. And if that is true, then we're gonna have a double whammy where you had households that were single parent and headed by women. Now you have even those who had partners and husbands who are now widowed. You know what I mean? Because their partners passed away. And I think we need to be cognizant of that, because the burden of now looking after the family financially, emotionally, and otherwise is going to become that much bigger. And Thembisa speaks about the issue of unemployment. We've got extended families. I have my own kind of a nuclear family, but I've got my extended family. So this is just going to be a bigger problem than we envisage. And we just need, I think, to be much more kinder to ourselves and kinder to each other. And I mean, somebody said the other day, we are now, because of this unemployment, most people are in preservation mode. People are worried about their jobs. Am I the next? You're asking, am I the next to die, and am I the next to lose a job? You know what I mean? That can't be a healthy situation. And I think we need to really be even more empathetic than we were in the past.
Absolutely.
Because I think you were adding something in terms of I suppose how people retaliate, you know?
Honestly, I also think that people are angry and they feel let down. Because you plan your life and accordingly, and then they say this is how you do things. You must have your policies, you must have that ready, you must have a job, you must have this. And something like this comes and your whole life is upside down and you simply just don't understand it. And what
was the security, you know?
Yeah. And now
we're
living in such uncertain times, you don't know what's going to happen that day. So you don't know what to do. Do I go out and buy that dolphin that I want, or do I save the money? You know, do I
what do I do?
You're probably safer on saving.
You know, and so you don't know, because you don't know, will I be here tomorrow? You don't know. And also people are angry because they feel let down because this came just out of nowhere. And right now everything is up in the air. And Thembisa right, we need to be kinder, especially to ourselves, because you can only give out what you have. You can only exude what you have within. So if you are kinder to yourself and you are a lot compassionate and empathetic to yourself, you can do that for other people. And we just remember that. And of course you can be angry, yes, but there has to be a certain time where we're like, okay, fine, there needs to be a solution now. And then that's where we get up and we have conversations like these.
And I think on a pragmatic level, and this is where now I bring my financial services kind of speech. So last year in my frantic state, I started going through all my policies. I started looking at everything. And people kept on saying, are you going to die? But I really behaved like I was going to die. I started looking at my beneficiaries. I started consolidating things where they were and my own understanding. And I think just a word of advice. If we haven't done that before, we really, for those of us who are still privileged to be working, we really need to look at our financial affairs. Find a financial advisor. Make sure you've got the right products, and make sure you've got beneficiaries that are nominated for your products. Make sure your family knows where your things are. I mean, one of my cousins, if you go to her room, she's got paper. She has listed all her policies so that if she dies, you don't get. So it can be as simple as that. Let's not complicate these things. We really need to make sure that if we were to die, because at some point we are going to die, each one of us. But let's not leave destitute children or destitute family members because they do not know what is where. And I think that's important. That has been an important lesson for me from COVID in terms of making sure that my financial affairs are in order.
Yeah. And you know what the thing is, especially about the entertainment industry and the arts, is that we tend to look past those things. And it's very important to be financially literate. And this is something that needs to be taught to every single person that's coming into this industry. And also have those policies. And even if you don't have a job right now, you have it later, you can always speak to your financial advisor and say, okay, I don't have this much money now. Can I take it down, my monthly input? That's why communication is very important. Say, I've lost my job, I won't be able to do this, and then they can make a plan for you. Or I can only pay 300 a month for the next how many months? Do you know what I mean? Because also me as well, I can't work until the doctor says I'm good to work, and they said it would take up to 6 months. So now going back to those policies and seeing what I have and what I can use, etc., and also speaking to my financial advisor and saying, all right, I won't be able to work for this amount of months. What are my options? Also, I'm a freelancer, for example. I'm only a call actor on a certain production. What are my options? Speak to your bankers, speak to your financial advisors, and ask, what are my options? You have to sit down and be financially literate and think about your family. Think about your family, because when you leave, then you leave them with such a mess, and they don't know what to do with your estate. You don't have a will, you don't know. So all of those things are so important. And I keep saying it to every single person who comes into this industry: have your affairs in order so that you go through and you act and you sing and you perform with a peace of mind. So important.
I think
yes. Sorry. No, I was going to say it's even more important for us as women, because then the issues of wills, if your husband dies, become, especially in our Black culture, then you are fighting with families and everybody has got a claim. And it really is important that we talk about these things with our partners while we are still alive and happy, because death will strike and we don't need to leave our children behind not knowing what to do.
You guys, and just before we do conclude, because I've loved this. I remember I said I want to write a book called Living Large Broke. Just because I was like, before COVID, you're living your best life, probably. You're getting whatever loan, you're getting your credit card, your overdraft, then bam, here's the situation. What then? And I think especially when you start as a young professional, you find yourself, you have access to a lot of things, but not understanding maybe what's good credit, how to build your finances accordingly. I now started reading Financial Wellbeing, and I thought to myself, nope. I need to share that living large broke, though, because it's not even yours. But ladies, thank you so much for your time. But before we do go, of course, I would love to know, just if you can give us just 3 advice or tips, for a young professional in corporate, a young professional who is, entering the entertainment space. I for a bit had the opportunity to work with an organization that was working with entertainment, and I really got to understand the pains that they were going through. Really got to understand how shrewd it can be, and so forth. So maybe let's start with the Sis Thembisa. If you can give us just 3 closing statements, maybe even before we get a few questions, if any, for that corporate girl who's looking up to Sis Thembisa.
Sure. I think I cannot overemphasize the importance of having a mentor and a sponsor. And I know people.
Which is which? Because sometimes we're like, it's one thing.
It is not one thing. It is not one thing. And I know that we always frown upon a sponsor because we feel that if you have a sponsor, it means you are going to be progressed. You will be safe in life. And that's not what it is. That's not a mentor is someone who's going to look out for your development. And it's somebody you can sit and you can say, here is where I really would like to go. This is what my experience is. These are the things that I think I struggle with. And from time to time, as you are going through your work journey or your career journey, you've got someone who knows you and has gone through the journey. And you can honestly talk to this person about anything and everything, whether it is the frustrations you are having at work, you've got a boss who's having issues with you, or you've got this colleague who is jealous of you. All those things you can talk to the mentor, and the mentor can help you from a career perspective, technically as well as just outside the techniques. And the mentor is the person who can also refer you to other people if they believe that your issue requires an expert. A sponsor is someone who is out there and knows you exist and is a cheerleader.
Yes.
It's that Sis Thembisa who met you perhaps, and you went for coffee and you started connecting, and Sis Thembisa always look out for you, because that Sis Thembisa is the person who probably will mention your name in the right places. Not because there's favoritism, but because she knows more about you than other people do. You know what I mean? Because there is a whole lot of us in the work environment. You may not be known, or people may not notice you, which takes me to the second point about building a brand. We all are brands. When you walk into that space, make sure you are building the brand you want to be.
Sure.
You cannot sit in a corner and hope that people are going to notice you, people are going to know you, or you can't be doing things that are contradicting what you want to achieve. You know what I mean? So you must treat yourself as a brand, the same way that marketers treat brands out there. Brand is nurtured, brand is developed. That talks to learning, you know what I mean? And I think for me, those are some of the most important things. And know that it's not going to be easy. the millennials, the generation, the young generation has got this instant gratification. You can't move and jump from one job to the other and be saying, you know, they don't want to pay or whatever. Build a brand. And building a brand is also about building experience and making sure that even if what you thought you wanted is not really what you are going to end up, you will make that transition and you will be deliberate. It won't be a default. And I think for me, those are some of the important things.
Yeah.
Okay. Just one from Thembisa. We
For
just
me,
have one question. Yeah.
it's very simple. Purpose, people, peace.
Love it.
You find your purpose and you stick to it. No more when things get tough or things get good. Have the right people around you, have the right support structure. Purpose, people equals peace. When you're at peace and you have peace of mind, you do the best work you possibly can. You treat people right and you go to sleep peacefully. That is it.
Sure. I love this. I have just one last question. And that's it? Well, thank you. We're back. I thought that we were closing. Just one last question, of course, from Onso. She has asked, Usis Thembisa, what is your definition of woman empowerment to you?
Women empowerment is about knowing, first of all, it starts with the woman, because I think this whole empowerment thing can be very misread. Correct. I need to empower people. It must be in me that I need to empower people, and I need to empower young women. I need to empower other women. I mustn't be oppressive to other women. So women empowerment is really about making sure that you are creating opportunities for women, you lighting their light, and you're not oppressing them. You are giving them opportunities. You are working them to their skills. And in return, they also must come up and raise their hands to do things that are not naturally the stuff that they would love to do things that don't look sexy and attractive, so that they can learn more about themselves. And I think women empowerment really is about continuous learning, going into spaces that you would not naturally go to. I mean, I never thought that I would find myself in financial services, in such a technical industry, from a very nice, flashy FMCG industry.
Amazing, yes.
You know, so I think you really have to push boundaries for yourself and for the person who's empowering you, really giving opportunities where they are necessary.
Sure. That's an amazing closing, Sis Thembisa. I want to thank you, beautiful ladies, for actually having this conversation with us today on the Flourishing Women season finale. It's been an absolute honor. Thank you, Sis Thembisa. Thank you, Thembisa. And I can only see what amazing things that are going to happen following today. Of course, we do want to thank our sponsors, which is Old Mutual and Lorato Agency. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Bye.